of all of these examples. We'll leave it up to local governments to do them. But you want to, in that case, you probably want to say which ones you're not in favor of. So you would be in favor of using houses that were empty, of taking over land that's currently not being used, of using park space, of using green space. But you wouldn't be in favor of like compulsory purchase, where you're like taking the houses off rich people, right? You see how you're defining what things you're willing to do and what things you aren't?
Yeah, okay.
So that's kind of related to what Steve said in the very first workshop, where he was saying it's important to be clear about what you're willing to do, about what you're defending. So that's what this is. That's what this question is, in which you're saying, what are we defending? What are we in favor of? That's what does this look like? Does that make sense? Any questions on this part? Let's get a little bit on here. Okay, the next part is this next bit is how to structure the rest of a prime minister's speech. 3 things. So this is not 1. This is like 0. You have to do this one. Then next 3 things. Now you have to do these 3 things in different amounts depending on the speech. But 1, principles. 2, efficacy. This is what I'll explain these in detail in a second. Efficacy. 3, alternatives. So this is the way I always remember it. What does this look like? Principles, efficacy, alternatives. So, in principles, not every speech or not every motion is going to require you to justify at length your principles. But you should probably include, in Prime Minister, you want to include a few sentences most of the time on some principles. Because it's going to be a good defense if maybe a team in your closing thinks that they don't have a lot of space to move practically, so they're going to do a principled extension. You want to have at least prove that you understand the principles of this case. In principles, you're answering 2 questions. Now, a lot of people get this confused and only answer the first one. So, 1, why can we do this? Right? The second one is, why must we do this? So a lot of people answer just the first one. They just answer, why can we do this? Example, the motion we just did. Or I need to pick another one aside from the motion we just did. But in the example of the motion we just did, why can we take land, or so like motion, this house would redistribute land. Right? This house would like engage in massive land redistribution in some country. In the UK. Because most rich people own most of the land in the UK. 1, why can we do this? 2, why must we do this? These are different questions. 1, we can do this because rich people didn't get this land legitimately. Right? They inherited it, they didn't work for it. Most of the time, 100,000 years ago, they stole it off somebody because they hit him over the head really hard. And now they've just passed it on for hundreds of years. And now some guy with a really funny last name has it. Okay? So we can take that land from him. Why must we take the land from him? Well, him having the land, that guy having all that land, hurts all these other people who don't have the land. It keeps them poor. It keeps them unable to have opportunities. It keeps our country unequal, in which this guy who owns all this land has a very unequal control over politics, over national discourse, etc. Those are different. Why can we take the land from him? Why we must take the land from him. Now this one, the why can we, this is just defensive. Right? This point here, there's only a defensive answer. In which, if someone on opposition says that it's principally wrong to do this, it's principally wrong to take the land from him, you have proved why it is principally allowable for us to do this. The second point is why it is principally necessary, why it must be done, right? So that way, that also defends against this is wrong, and therefore this is wrong to do this, and therefore we don't need to, and therefore we shouldn't do it. But if it is necessary that we do it in order for us to be moral beings, in order for us to have done the right thing, right, we still should do this. Does that make sense? Now, sometimes the motion is going to be very principled. Probably land distribution is a very principled argument. There was a motion at Worlds in Greece where it was like this house would redistribute all the minerals on Earth equally between all the countries. That's probably principle because it's a bit wacky and it's hard to do in practice. Eventually, as you debate more and more, your instincts will get better on how to divide this up. But if a motion is quite difficult to do in practice, but clearly has a principal justification for it, so maybe like on 100% inheritance tax, it is a bit difficult to do because people hide all their stuff, but has a really good principal reason to do it, right? That's where this is probably going to be a longer section. If it is a thing that's quite practical, right, it's from a good social policy, other countries have done it maybe, or it's not super wacky, right, this probably needs to be shorter because it's not as much of a jump to believe that it's principally allowable and principally necessary. Okay, any questions on this section?
So in terms of like the wider things of like kind of doing analysis and then impacting, where does principles fit into that? Is that just part of the analysis?
So principles is a kind of analysis. Principles, you want to do analysis the same way. Your impacting is slightly different because you normally don't have like a group that is affected or something like that. But in terms of the analysis, you want to prove these two things, why we can do this and why we must do this. So that's the analysis part. And then in impacting, you want to prove why doing the right thing is the thing we want to choose. And so there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's some really good workshops on it that I would recommend watching online because I don't have time to go into like whole how to do principles here. Like the way I usually use is that as human beings, we, as much as we possibly can, try to avoid immoral actions. We believe that the cost of an immoral action is so high that we have tried to avoid it at all costs. With that being true, right, with the evidence of our own lives and the lives of others in front of us, we would therefore think the cost of doing an immoral action would be too high to do it, and so we would want to choose the thing that is moral. Since we have proven that this is a moral action, we should therefore do it. It is circular, but like none of us are philosophers, and once you do, it turtles all the way down eventually, right? So there's some better workshops on principles, but that's a 30-second run through of it. Okay, next section. Efficacy. This is very shadowy. Can everyone see this? Right. I don't know if you can see it on the board. Hi, recording.
I think you can.
Efficacy. So this is why the question you are answering here. It always helps me think of it in questions is why will this work? Right. So this house would redistribute all the land of the UK equally between all its citizens. So, what are we trying to achieve there with that motion?
Economic equality.
Sorry?
Economic equality.
Economic equality. So, goal. Economic equality. There's probably some other goals as well. You probably want to make people feel good about themselves, and you probably want to empower them and have political equality as well. But if this is your big one, then why will this work to get here? So yes, so when you think of efficacy, you think of what are we trying to do? Or why will this work to get there? What you're trying to do is going to change depending on every motion, and you're going to want to discuss with your partner. A thing you want to discuss with your partner is what is this trying to do? What is the goal here? What is this motion trying to achieve? And then you say, why will this work? And so here is where you're doing a lot of the traditional analysis stuff. This is where you're saying this will work because, land is something that has a lot of value. So when we redistribute it, everyone's going to have the same amount of equity beneath them. When you have equity, you're able to do things like get mortgages and buy houses and go to university and all this kind of stuff, right? And that's one of the things that's going to lead to economic equality. So that's where you're doing your kind of traditional analysis. So in here, you're going to do your analysis and your impacting, but you're always thinking in this section, you're answering the question, why will this work? This is the boring, why is this going to make people richer? Why is it going to make them happier? Why is it going to make them live longer? Make sense? Any questions? No? Okay, last bit. The question you're answering is why aren't we doing something else? Or why aren't we doing something different? Because if your goal is economic equality, right, there is a whole host of other things you could be doing in order to get to economic equality, right? What's something else we could do to make people more equal? Example.
Education access improved.
Improve educational access. What else? Read? What do we currently do? What do we what do we do to rich people in order to tax?
Progressive taxation.
Yeah, we tax people, right? So why are we going to do that to get to our economic equality? Why are we doing this and not something else?
Because the status quo is bad.
Okay, yeah, because the status quo is bad. Why else?
It would never solve economic equality.
Okay, so does it solve the problem all the way? So here you want to think of some of the alternatives, because this is going to guard you against counterprops. It's going to guard you against extensions. Here you're saying, why aren't we doing something else? Why are all those other options what's worse than this one? And this is also where you're proving that this is the most important. So you want to think of a few other options. You want to think of the most plausible ones, not the wackiest ones, right? Like you want to think of the ones that you think opening opposition might run as their counterprop. Because if you do, this house would redistribute all the land in the UK. Opening opposition is probably very legit, being like, we can not do that and also do progressive taxation. Wouldn't that be more sensible? And you need to say here why that would not. Why is that not going to work? And that's what needs to go in here. Yes?
Also, I suppose you could just sort of concede that the two aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, and you can also improve education access while doing this and that would be more effective.
Yeah, so another version of this question is, why do we have to do this? Do we have to do this as opposed to something else? This is a really important part of OG, because sometimes when we're doing the principles and the advocacy, we're always talking about our goal. We're like, equality would be great. Economic equality would be wonderful. Here's all the wonderful things that would come from that. And everyone's like, yep. Totally agree with you so far. That makes sense. Why are we taking everyone's land away again? Right? So this is where you want to say, why are we doing this? Why this and not something else? Why do we have to do this? Because in OG you can say, we're going to take away everyone's land, and we're going to do educational access, and we're going to do progressive taxation. And OO can say, we're going to do all those things too, but not the taking away everyone's land bit, right? So you need to say, why this? Why are we doing this instead of something else? And what is it about this that is the most important? So this is called alternatives, but this just means why not all the alternatives? Okay, now that was the boring part about me talking. Are there any questions about how this is structured?
So should we explicitly put some rebuttal, pre-rebut some of the alternatives in our OD speech?
Yeah, that's what the alternative section is for.
It's not you. Okay. So we should explicitly say, we can't do other things for economic equality without doing it.
Yeah, or obviously the OO can do progressive taxation, but it is not going to achieve economic equality like this will. If we only do progressive taxation, this will not help as much as this will. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because opening opposition, the one thing that opening opposition can't do is the policy that you are doing, right? So you need to make sure that the policy you are doing is the reason why you're going to win.
So is it really worth, assuming you've picked up your policy and explained why it's a good thing, is it really worth talking about alternatives that aren't mutually exclusive?
Explain what you mean?
Wouldn't it be more useful to say, this is why we're not going to do this that we explicitly can't do at the same time?
Okay, yeah, that's probably one thing you want to focus on, but if it's a good time to use your PM speech as pre-buttal, because if you think maybe that the opening opposition is going to run something, is going to say, look, these are all the reasons why taking everyone's land would be terrible, we're just going to do progressive taxation, that's going to do everything instead. Progressive taxation is not mutually exclusive with your policy, right? But you need to prove why on its own, because progressive taxation on its own is mutually exclusive with your policy, because you have to do the policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So when you're focusing on an alternative, it is in the way in which it is mutually exclusive. Right? It's fine in alternatives for you to say progressive taxation is good. We think it's achieved a lot of good things in Western liberal democracies, but on its own, it cannot achieve economic equality because the on its ownness, the singleness of it, that is mutually exclusive with your OG. That makes sense? Do you have a question?
Yeah, it's the alternatives probably the more risky part of it, because obviously if you're starting to talk about the other issues, if you don't exactly get what you're saying right, then you're opening yourself to actually like making yourself more vulnerable to rebuttal.
What do you mean?
So for example, if you were going to try and say something but you didn't quite say it the right way.
I mean, hopefully you say it the right way.
Yeah, but so you get POI or something like that, and you know, then is it not sometimes maybe easier to leave if there's a really strong opposition argument? Is it not sometimes easier to leave it to your deputy prime minister and just focus on why your argument's better than?
So if there's an argument that you know is really strong in opening opposition, that it's really good, it's debate winning, right? The motion seems to, like when the motion was announced, you thought this is op heavy. There's a very clear reason why we wouldn't do this, right? You are not going to benefit your team by pretending that that reason doesn't exist. Because either you have time to respond to it and your partner has time to respond to it, or just your partner has time to respond to it, right? Is that what, so you see where I'm going there?
Yeah.
Because if it is the case, you've got, so like, I can't think of any off the top of my head, and if somebody listens to this, I'll be annoyed at me. But if you get a motion that's really, really op heavy, like there's a really like this house would institute a hard border on the Isle of Ireland, right? Like there's a really obvious reason why we have not done that, right? And if your opposition team have like two brain cells to rub together, they're gonna think of it. So you pretending that it's not real or that it doesn't exist is not going to benefit you. So you need to be able to approach that head on, because there's like dodging it is probably not going to help you. You want to take the maximum time you can to deal with it. And sometimes if I'm not going to pretend that people who CA competitions are perfect, and sometimes you are going to get a motion that's really op heavy, right? Being able to deal with that head on and be like, we're going to try and, maybe we're not going to come first because that might be impossible, but we're going to come second because we've really been ballsy about this and we understand that this is going to be bad, but we're going to deal with it. A lot of the time judges are also not stupid and have probably done a bunch of debating, are like, right, yeah, this is probably op heavy, so I'll probably win, but that was like really ballsy and they really did deal with the fact that this is probably a big problem for them, right? You're probably going to do better.
Cool.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give every single person here a motion, and we're going to take like 8 minutes of prep time, and I want people to do a very loose version of this structure. So I want you to be able to answer each of these questions. So the questions are, what does this look like? Why can we do this? Why must we do this? What is our goal and why will this work? And then why aren't we doing something different? And I'm going to give everybody a motion now. Let me find the motion.
Careful, I'm running off the wire behind you.
Okay, I'll try to understand it. Okay. Here's some tough ones. Coco, this house supports essential services workers' right to strike. You need good. Okay. Who had a question about this house regrets motions? Somebody asked me a question about regrets. Was it you? This house regrets the idealization of soldiers and veterans. This house would prohibit all research aiming to create sentient artificial intelligence. Assuming we live in a world where superheroes exist, so superheroes are real, this house would require superheroes to publicly reveal their identities. This house believes that environmentalists, this house believes that environmentalists should launch violent campaigns against major polluting companies. Got it?
Yep.
Okay, this house would create and enforce filial responsibility laws, ultimately. Create and enforce filial responsibility laws. So this means that people legally must be required to take care of their parents.
Okay.
So children are legally required to take care of their parents.
Sure.
And here, this house would ban religious charities from proselytizing in the developing world. Do you know what proselytizing is? Attempting to convert. This house would ban religious charities from attempting to convert in the developing world. What kind of motion do you want?
I would have loved the environmental one. I like that one so much.
We'll do a different one. Do you just like environmental motions or what?
No, I like the environmental terrorism one, but it's okay. Any motion is fine. That's a really cool part.
So scroll far now. This house believes in times of I'm going to give you an economics. This house believes in times of economic crisis. The state should withhold information that could damage market or consumer confidence.
Market or consumer confidence.
Yeah. Okay.
What is consumer confidence?
So like, if consumers feel that the market is going to do well, they'll probably buy stuff. Which if they don't feel it's going to do well, they'll see.
Oh. Oh, I see.
So like market and consumer confidence are very similar. Okay, it's 3 o'clock right now. Everybody has 8 minutes. Or well, you have the time it takes me to go to the bathroom and come back. Because I need to. I'll be right back. Everybody use this and, do it privately. Don't cheat.
Did you pause the recording or just having fun looking at your screen?
It is just an empty screen. I
It's not
like
live
the.
streaming, so.
No, it's not live
Okay,
streaming.
you can just edit it.
Yeah, you can, but I like the idea of people having to sit through
No one's
these
gonna
8
sit
minutes.
They're just gonna skip through to 8 minutes, aren't they?
They can choose one of the motions.
Yeah, and they could
Like,
spend the same amount of time.
Plus,
You're welcome.
Video, video.
Plus, they might just skip through to like whenever they next see Bethany come on the screen, so they won't actually ever hear us talking about this now. Like,
That's true.
so if you're listening to this right now, all you're doing is like sitting through what you thought were 8 empty minutes. What are you doing with your life?
No one can tell me one of the things.
Yeah, future debaters.
No, Dan
What are you
doesn't.
doing? You guys suck.
That That was George Wilson.
At me.
Like, if you're using this as a sensible way to time the 8 minutes, good luck you. Keep playing it on the house.
How long are the speeches?
No, I don't think we delivered the speeches. Yeah.
Oh,
We were
okay.
just prepping stuff.
I hope we're not delivering these speeches.
Yeah.
Right, that would take a while.
Well, I do want to debate half of these motions.
I want to do
Some
the
of them are really
superheroes
good.
now. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like yours.
Yeah, the superheroes need to go because of terrorism one.
Actually, I really want to hear your prop for this because
Oh, I have an entire prop.
Okay, everyone's got 3 more minutes. Okay, 1 minute. Okay. I'm going to be over here writing while we do our debrief. But everybody should have a basic answer to all these questions on their motion. Now, before I get everyone to debrief, can anybody think of why I only gave you 8 minutes?
Because you're going to like spend time walking to different rooms.
You're going to spend time walking to your room? What else?
Spend time chatting to your partner.
What about?
Well, you just have you have to condense 2 people's thought processes into one team essentially, whereas with us, we're just doing it ourselves.
Yep.
Clashes in the debate, so like what extensions could be, what Mark's going to say.
Yep.
Important things to frame.
Yep. And one thing Steve said during when we were talking right at the beginning, is you and your partner are always going to be smarter than just you. So you do want to get your partner's input on all these questions. You do want to know, what does your partner think the goal is? You do want to know what your partner thinks this looks like. Especially if your partner has stronger in some areas than you are. You want to be able to use everybody's skill set to the best of your ability. So I gave you 8 minutes because you should use some time in your speech. You should set some time aside in prep time to write this out. But you're probably going to have 5 to 8 minutes. So you need to be able to produce a Prime Minister's speech of good quality in that time. And that's really when you're going to be able to give, the best Prime Minister speeches ready every single time, when you're able to use that amount of time. Okay, you got your motion first. We'll start with you, but I will go around everyone randomly. So it's not going to go in just order of what I gave the motions. I'm going to go around everyone. So what I'm going to ask is, I'm not going to ask you to run through everything. Try and give me 1 to 2 sentences that answer each question. Run through the questions and answer them for me. I'm going to be writing. I am listening, I promise. I'm ready for the game.
So my notion was this house supports the essential service workers' right to strike. I frame this as this principle supports the right of these workers. For example, and I just find essential services as things like healthcare and education and transport and energy in cases of legitimate grievances. I said, why can we do this? Because workers have a right to fair working conditions and they need some capacity to leverage and access and change their treatment in situations where they're being unfairly discriminated against. Why must we do this? That is because it's in the interest of employers to encourage like fair labour, because employers will always do better in situations where they have more leverage, and it's effective signalling when working conditions are below the standards. And similarly with the strike, it's kind of fair because strikes are usually a reaction to a proposed change, suggesting the demands of the workers are legitimate and feasible because of better conditions previously existed. Okay, what is the goal? Ultimately, like fairer working conditions and for workers to have some kind of agency over their treatment. And increase respect for the work that they do from their employers. So this policy aims the goal by causing significant disruptions and forcing the employer to consider meeting the demands of workers by seeing the consequences of work without them. And public pressure also simultaneously encourages political change, which no matter the result of the strike leads to better working conditions as the pressure forces the dispute to be resolved. Similarly, why would we do something else? Presumably strikes are just generally always a last resort anyways. Negotiations have already taken place and usually in reaction to proposed change. Similarly, so this kind of other ways have probably already been exhausted, and this is kind of the last case resort, and as this is necessary.
Okay, good, very quick run through. I like that. Okay, you're next. What's your motion? And then answer each of the questions.
So this House believes that environmentalists should launch violent campaigns against major policing companies. So what does this look like? Major policing companies are going to be companies like plastic producers and cosmetic producers and car manufacturers. The campaigns against them will be things like disruption of supply lines, like blowing out tire trucks and so on, or breaking infrastructure like buildings. Basically anything that causes extreme monetary damage without endangering lives.
So smart. You see how this is? What does this look like? That is a plausible and realistic version of this. But you're saying we're not willing to defend ones that directly attack human life. Now, what happens if you get POI'd? Clarification, would you still support ones that accidentally kill humans?
Well, if it's accidentally, then that wasn't the goal of the motion, so it's kind of irrelevant.
Okay, yeah, there. That's the right answer. You're saying that might happen. We're willing to accept that there might be some casualties. We don't think that we wouldn't support campaigns that directly target human life, and so we think that that's less important. Smart. Okay, keep going.
So why can we do this? A large group of people committed to protecting the environment are well placed to cause the damage because they can coordinate and they can decide what to do.
No. The question, why can we do this, is not physically why can we do this.
Okay.
It's why principally can we do this.
Okay.
Right? So why are we principally allowed to take this people's property?
Okay. I do cover them one in a second.
Okay, no worries. I just wanted to flag that early on.
Why must we do this? Major polluting companies cause severe damage to the environment, which they don't pay for in any meaningful sense, which give rise to externalities, which is say like environmental cost that isn't borne by the company itself. So this campaign forces these companies to either accept the cost of the environmental damage or to stop causing damage. And like this is the eventual goal, is that they stop causing damage because that will lead to less pollution and that will lead to a better outcome for everybody, like humanity in general. So the goal of this is to make the monetary damage to the campaign to be either equal to or more than the cost to the, or the perceived cost to the environment. And so they will change their behavior because the financial cost is what ultimately the company cares about the most, which is why it will be an effective campaign, because attacking a company's income supply is probably the most effective way of getting to actually change their behavior. Alternatives that wouldn't work, so taxes can be avoided because it is reasonably easy to change, hide the evidence for pollution. So like Volkswagen changed the emission settings on their cars to make it look like they were really green, but they weren't. And things like regulations can be lobbied against, and they are too long term to be effective immediately.
Okay, good. I like that. I like that, especially about regulations. I like that right at the end, where they're not effective. They're not effective in the long run. So why do you think this would be effective in the long run?
Because it can just be done at any time.
Okay.
So if they suddenly lapse and become more polluting, you can just launch the same campaign.
Okay, good. Smart. Okay, Arib?
Okay, I'm gonna preface this with I don't know much about how markets work.
That's it. Well, okay, who remembers what I said earlier this morning?
Oh, no, this wouldn't be in the speech.
Doesn't
I know
matter,
that.
it's still during training, no self-deprecation,
Okay.
it's a bad habit. Okay, on you go, Arib.
Okay, so what does this look like? So usually what happens in a lot of markets is that due to speculation because of information released by the government, as it's the most trusted source, it leads to a spiral in terms of people trying to either, like, for example, sell their houses in terms of financial crisis, or like any other product, which leads to further spiraling, which leads to like just it lowering to a point where it should just not have reached. What this would look like is a lot of the times government simply withholding specific information, such as, like, I imagine specific information about, like, for example, the GDP. I don't know if that's a realistic thing. That wouldn't be in the speech. Or things such as future trade agreements or future tariffs, which could potentially be put in. Why can we do this? The state has no obligation to reveal information. It often does when it's useful. It operates with secret services. It often doesn't reveal trade agreements until, like, it doesn't reveal a lot of things until it's actually in place. We think that that a state's legitimacy is not premised on the obligation to reveal information. I would potentially do more things, but it would take too long. Why must we do this? Oftentimes, the release of this information is unequal in access, as in the people with a greater amount of connections or a greater wealth often obtain this information more easily. They're greater able to take advantage of this information. It means the poorest in society lose out. It also means it is something that is stoppable by a state, which is often harmful to majority of people, so therefore it should be stopped. In terms of efficacy, why does this actually work? So this would be in terms of the comparatives, because obviously the comparative can be, oh, then people will speculate everything. So the government is a reliable source of information. When it releases some sort of information, often people try and guess to what it could lead to. This could range from like subsidizing crops to like international trade agreements. And oftentimes this causes a predictive behavior within people where they try and go against it, and often because too many people try and save themselves, it means that all confidence is lost. The price drops dramatically in whatever product you're interested in, and then that causes an even greater drop, which means that it just absolutely plummets, and the people who have the most investment in it and the latest to pull out often lose out entirely. If this doesn't happen, that means people can't partake in this predictive behavior. It means the government has a greater ability to limit all of this. find the alternatives. So so in terms of market forces, the people literally involved in the buying and selling are probably have the greatest amount of control. Oftentimes when markets spiral, there's some level that the government can do, such as like stopping trading, etc. But oftentimes these are incredibly detrimental, lost faith in government, and end up not being able to control it. Whereas if we can stop the speculation in the first place, that means we have some level control of the market forces themselves, which means that we allow the economy to naturally retain rather than taking forceful measures such as like closing down the entire stock market.
Okay. Regrets motion in the back.
Okay, so I've got the motion, this House regrets the idealisation of soldiers and veterans. And what does this world look like? Well, it's a world where we don't have like popular support such as like bumper stickers saying support our troops, and it's becoming a political cause for one side of the political spectrum. And it means that we don't have, say, politicians talking about how great the military is all the time, and we don't have the media fetishising like brave soldiers or that kind of thing. They are instead treated as like ordinary workers doing a job. Not a bit like, say, ambulance workers doing something useful. Yes, are they heroes? No. And if in principle, why can we do this? Because idealisation is by definition not the truth. It's a distorted version. The truth is good, therefore we should.
Why is the truth good?
So the truth is good because it allows people to make sensible decisions from all the information.
Why is that good? Sometimes people are happier with superstitions.
Because people should people can't make intelligent decisions unless they know everything.
When you say intelligent, what do you mean?
Reasoned decisions unless they have.
So instead you mean good for them. So this is a classic mistake in debating. Truth is not objectively good. You have to prove that it's good. And when there's a difference between an intelligent decision and a good decision. And it might be that a decision is intelligent but bad for the people in question. In which case, do we as a debate, like as an average reasonable judge, support it? Because there's lots of decisions that are smart but that hurt people. And so instead what you're saying is we can't make decisions because if we don't understand the consequences, and if we don't have the truth, we don't know what those consequences are. That's what you meant. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
I'm going to move around the room. I'm still listening.
So why must we do this? Because if we don't, then there's damage. It comes back to our goal. Okay, this is something weird because I did the goal first and worked out why we must do it from there. Our goal is better integration, understanding of the military and civilian lives. And we must do that because...
Okay, question. On this motion, everyone remembers what the motion is? Question for everyone. Would that be your goal, this motion?
What's the motion?
This House regrets the idealization of soldiers and veterans.
What's the goal then?
The goal is better understanding the integration of soldier military lives, because we have harms like soldiers committing suicide because the world doesn't understand, and we want to fix these harms.
Would that be the goal that you would choose, Coco?
I wouldn't say so, no.
What would you choose?
Kind of jingoism, glorification of war at the expense of other policies.
Okay, what other ones would people use?
You stop idolising toxic masculinity.
Okay, that's a good one. My one would probably be just less war. What happens in wars?
Death.
People die. That's a very clear impact, right? Because you always want to choose something where you're going to be able to convince people as fast as possible what the impacts are. And if you're saying less people will die, your judges are like, that's probably a good idea. Less people dying, probably a good idea. I don't really need a lot of extra proof on that one. So think about what goal is going to be the most useful for you. But continue with what you're saying. So why is this going to work? And then why are we doing something different?
Oh, sorry. Why will this work? Because... God damn it, sorry. Why this work? Because the idealisation and not understanding something is a major way to make wrong decisions. I'm a bit confused with this, but...
So why aren't we doing something else?
And we are doing something else because this is a cultural issue. This is something we can't fix, say, with government policy. It's something that or at least... Again, I'm just a bit confused with regret motions when it comes to what we doing something else. Is it just why aren't we in the status quo, or why?
Well, so regrets are motions in which you are probably going to have less alternatives, but you are going to say, why is it that why do we care about the idealization of soldiers? Why isn't it that we care about jingoism or colonialism? Why is it about the idealization? What do we think about it is about this concept that really creates the issues we're talking about?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so in this case, it's the idealisation of soldiers creates the disconnect between when people actually meet, soldiers actually go home, and what people expect from soldiers.
Okay.
From the goal, from my goal of better integration. If you idealise, that means there's a bigger gap between expectations, and that can cause shock.
Okay, good. Okay, I want to have one more, and then we're going to play a game. That was what I was doing just there. So who thinks they have a really good one? Who liked their motion or thinks they have some really good reasons?
I like my motion.
Okay, tell us your motion, and then...
So this house would prohibit all research that would aim to create artificial intelligence.
Okay, what does this look like?
So basically, it would look like just a hardcore ban, so anything that looked like it could become artificial intelligence, anything that kind of could contribute to artificial intelligence, so something like kind of increasing the efficiency of an AI system, it would just all flat out be banned. Why can we do this? So basically, as a government, you are empowered by your citizens to protect them from harms which they can't protect themselves against.
Or we allow POIs.
You can ask a question at the end.
Okay.
So sort of like, so basically if as an individual you're allowed to use self-defense to protect you from something which is going to harm you, but basically some things you can't protect yourself from, that's the point of the government, and basically what we proved later on in the speech is that because artificial intelligence will have so many harms and citizens can't protect themselves from it, the government has to do it for them. That's why we can do it principally. So why must we do it? Artificial intelligence will put millions of people out of work. Short term, it will sort of be primary sector workers, which will lead to loads of economic harms. Then over time, it will become tertiary sector workers with more economic harms. Also, you reach a point where artificial intelligence will kind of work with itself and advance it, and at that point, humans lose control.
Why will this work?
Yeah, okay. Okay, so why will this work? So basically, by completely banning it, you stop any advancement into a world where we do have artificial intelligence. So at the minute, we don't have artificial intelligence. So by flat out banning it and flat out banning everything to do with it, there's zero risk of that actually happening.
Why do you think people won't try to avoid the ban?
So artificial intelligence being quite complicated, the only people actually working with it are researchers and stuff.
There we go.
And they are the type of people who do follow government legislation because they lose funding if they don't follow it, and they lose credibility if they don't follow it, and actually, in terms of their own personal careers, they can't have any advancement if it's in a legitimate field.
Cool. Okay, why aren't we doing something else?
Okay. So the easier thing to do would just to regulate it, but regulations can be undone very, very easily by a very kind of basic change in the political tide. So you've got that in America at the minute where all their banking regulations have been undone very quickly and easily.
Good example.
So if that were to happen with artificial intelligence, actually, one bad election means that
we could do all the harms of artificial intelligence.
And also, by flat out banning, you actually protect yourself from that happening, because if it ever does happen, it's not like there's like a little wealth of information on AI, there's literally nothing. So.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, you never really defined what your definition of AI is, because AI does in fact actually already exist, but you said it doesn't. But it depends what you're talking about AI. You know?
Well, so
computer game characters or people think or computers that think like humans.
Just like, for example, your phone being able to like read some sort of things through the camera lens is already AI. But
your phone throwing up news.
Well, so that's why it's important. And what does this look like? What exactly are you trying to ban? So, and because judges aren't scientists, and because there is a lot of disagreement over what artificial intelligence means, being able to say we recognize that there are some forms of artificial intelligence. I think the motion includes the word sentient.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're saying we have some forms of artificial intelligence, but clearly my phone and knowing that I'm outside Tesco is not sentient, right? And so you want to define the word sentient there, and you want to say, okay, what is it about that, and what are we defining? So you don't have to like create a rule for it, but you want to say, for example, right, algorithms in our phone that know where we are or that are able to like translate information. We would be fine with that, but things that are trying to create separate organisms, I don't know the right word, right? That would be one. That's an example. Yes, Coco.
I think sort of my thing with the goal is, I think I would like to hear what the consequences and what the harm of AI is, like what the actual concrete issues are and how that does affect society. Because if you're saying it's the government's duty to protect citizens from this, threat that they can't protect themselves against, then what is that threat and what does that look like and what are the consequences to citizens?
Yep.
Wasn't that in the why must we do this?
I just didn't, I
Is
didn't.
it,
It would be something that we would want to expand on.
So also, like, you're saying like, oh, these harms, that it's going to take everyone's jobs, and this has harms, and I can accept that losing jobs has harms, but I'm not sure you'd still lose jobs if you've got non-sentient ones.
Yeah, and so this is something that would go into your analysis and in your alternatives. Why we're focusing on just this? Why aren't we doing something different?
also the goal, like with AI, one of the things people worry about is like the total eradication of human beings. So like choosing a job.
This always happens in AI debates. Okay, so we're going to do a quick game now because what we've been doing here is focusing on PM speeches. What we're going to do next is a little bit of mental exercise around DPM because Deputy Prime Minister, you do have a speech to respond to, but you want to be preparing this stuff in advance. You don't want to just be sitting there in prep time like doing who knows what, right? Like you want to be thinking, what is the other side going to run? What are they going to say? And how do I respond to that? So I've put motions around the room, around the back. We're going to do a little bit moving around. So I want everyone to go find one motion and stand in front of it. There's motions on every single different topic. Don't be picky, just stand in one. Everyone's going to get to experience all the motions. Just pick one. We're going to go around, so there should be slightly more than one per person. Everyone should have a pen with them. I should have said that before people moved. Does everyone have a pen or a pencil, a writing implement?
Oh, it's just writing paper.
What?
Paper here.
Yeah, you need a pen.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I just bought my book off.
Okay. 1. Rules of this game. 1. Try and use your best handwriting. I recommend writing in all capital letters. 2nd, do not write ginormous. There's only one piece of paper. So, what I'm going to do is I've got my phone around here. So where's my phone? At every station, everyone's going to get 20 seconds. First of all, what I'm going to say is, okay, what is the other side going to say? And I want you to write in one sentence, one quick, succinct sentence. What is the other side going to say? What is an argument the other side is going to make? Other side to this motion. So the OO to this motion, the motion that you're looking at, what is the other side going to say in a sentence? When those 30 seconds are up, I'm going to go change. I'm going to move on. If there's a sentence on your piece of paper, there will be because it'll be the second one. You need to write, okay, what would I say in response to that? So like, example, Arib has his motion. He's going to write what he thinks the other side is going to say. Then when I say change, Vicky is going to run over there. And Vicky is going to say, okay, what in DPM would I say in response to that? Okay? Does that make sense? And then I'm going to say change again, and it's going to start all over again.
We're going to write
a different thing that we think OO is going to say. Because remember, OO is not just going to say one thing. So, example, Arib's going to write down what he thinks OO is going to say. Vicky's going to run over there. She's going to write down her response to that OO argument. Right? And then I'm going to go say change again. And your name?
Ollie.
Ollie's going to run over there. And Ollie's going to write, what else do I think OO is going to say?
Okay.
Next sentence of what OO is going to say. So like put a star in front of your rebuttal so we know it's rebuttal, right? Just put a star, then rebuttal. And then if it's not starred, if the most recent sentence was a star, you need to write what is OO going to say. At the beginning of every 30 seconds, I will make clear what it is you're doing, right? Are there any questions? No? Okay, your 30 seconds start now. What is OO going to say? I'm going to get out of the way. One sentence. What is OO going to say? Write in your best handwriting so the other person can read it. Okay, 10 seconds. What is OO going to say? 5 seconds. 3 seconds. 2, 1, change. Okay? Go, run. No, you gotta go that way, that way.
Oh, that way.
No, Vicky, this way.
Right.
The other guy was going the wrong way. Ollie, come on, go. Right, okay. Now, you have to write, what is your rebuttal? 30 seconds. What is your rebuttal to this? What are you going to say to OO? You're a Deputy Prime Minister. Your partner is relying on you. What are you going to say? What is your response? Put a star in front of it. What is your response? Hope this works. Star in front of it. What are you going to say? Put a star in front of your rebuttal so we know it's rebuttal. Okay, 10 seconds. What's your rebuttal to this? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, change. Okay, now you are writing what you think OO is going to say. Change, people are moving, let's go. You only have 30 seconds.
I have to read the motion first.
Sorry, my camera too brief.
It's okay.
It's the last.
Jeez.
Okay, let's go.
So what should be our conversation?
Yeah, now what is OO going to say?
Response to response.
No. What is OO going to say? What's another thing OO is going to say? What's another thing that OO is going to say? Another thing that OO is going to say. 10 seconds to read the motion. Okay, what is OO going to say? Okay. So. We'll give you 20 seconds. What I was going to say? You want to write it down?
Yeah. Oh, were we not supposed to write it yet?
No,
I can write more,
No.
but it already feels too long.
Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, change.
Hang on, I need to swap
Now
hands.
you're rebutting. Rebuttal to this. I know this is going fast, but this is what actual is like. So, 10 seconds to read the motion, to figure it out, to read what the person has said, and then you're coming up with rebuttal. Did a good job, Nikki. Coming up with rebuttal. DPM is a really hard position. You have to think of a lot of stuff really quickly. So this is what I'm doing. This is boot camp for DPM. Okay, 20 seconds.
This must be really fun watching the recording.
20 seconds.
just to see someone run past every 30 seconds.
Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, what is OO going to say? Next one. You've done rebuttal. What is OO going to say? Just move on to the next thing. I'll give you 10 seconds to read the motion. What is OO going to say? What is OO going to say? Quick sentence. What is OO going to say? Try and be different than the other arguments, but what is OO going to say? What is OO going to say? Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, 3, 2, 1, change. Come on, let's go. Next one. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, rebuttal. Now we're writing rebuttal. What is our rebuttal to this argument? So everyone gets 10. I'm giving you 10 seconds to read the motion, so I'm actually giving you like 40 seconds. But you know. Some of them are longer motions than others. Sorry, no. Okay, rebuttal to what is on the piece of paper. What is your piece of rebuttal? Okay, probably 10 more seconds. Okay, rebuttal done. Change. This is the last one, I think, or last two. What is OO going to say? What's another OO argument? What is OO going to say? Ooh, who's in here? What is OO going to say? Everyone gets a little bit of time to read the motion. But what is OO going to say? What is opening opposition going to say?
Like 3 other questions. Like,
Yeah, well,
cover
so
everything.
this is the thing. Deputy Prime Minister, you have to think of all the things opening opposition is going to say, not just the obvious ones. So what is OO going to say? Okay, nearing the end of the time. What is OO going to say? Everybody written something down? What is OO going to say? Gold star for Vicky and Reed for finishing early. Right, let's go. Change.
Wait, that's my one.
Arif.
Yeah, you missed one.
Did I?
Arif, you went past Coco. You're going there.
I'm sorry.
2 key. Okay, everybody get the next one? Okay, now you are rebutting.
Is this rebuttal?
Yep, you are now writing rebuttal. Rebuttal to OO. The person before you has written what they think OO is going to say, and you are now trying to take that apart. Trying to think of a reason why that's not true, or why it's less important.
What exactly discussion is this?
So people don't like it. For instance, people don't like naked
Okay,
bodies
yeah.
and arms,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
This would make no sense. I don't
She
think.
said it doesn't make sense to your rebuttal.
There you go. Coco's thinking like the Deputy Prime Minister. Why does it? So think of a reason why it doesn't make sense. Why it's not true. Why it's less important. Finished already? Okay, 10 more seconds. Ten more seconds. Everybody move on one. Okay, everybody move on one. Everyone should be back at the one that they chose. Are they? Everyone back at the one they were originally sat at? Okay. Okay. That was boot camp for thinking of what the other team are going to say and also writing about them. Okay. Why did I make you do that? Aside from my own perverse enjoyment.
Make us healthier.
Yeah, to make you walk around. What else are you?
Think faster.
Okay, think faster. Think about what faster?
Think about rebuttals and where the holes in the argument are.
Mm-hmm. And?
Think about both sides.
Yep. Why is that really important for Deputy Prime Minister?
Because he's the only one who gets to react to part of the bench.
In Prime Minister, in opening government, yep, you're the only one who gets any rebuttal time. So you gotta use, or you're the only one who gets any responsive time. So you use that to your best of your ability. So you gotta use all your prep time in addition to the 7 minutes. Because if you think about it, the closing op whip gets to respond to everyone in government. They get basically 45 minutes in order to do that, if not longer, right? They get a lot of time to think of what they're going to rebut. So as Deputy Prime Minister, you need to use all the time you have available to you, including your prep time. So you want to be thinking, what is the other side going to say, and how do I take that apart? What other things am I going to rebut? Okay, who likes their motion? The motion they got in front of them. Some of them are hard. On purpose. You like your motion? What's your motion?
This house would recast male action heroes as Dino.
Okay, so what's something on your piece of paper that you think is a good example that we want to celebrate?
I haven't read the board.
Oh, okay.
As in, Do we launch it from government or launch it as opposition?
Well, so you think that it's a good example of someone thinking of the opposition side and rebutting it. This is collaborative. This is also practice in reading other people's handwriting, which is very useful when you get better at debating. Vicky?
Right, so my motion was this House believes the state should pay reparations to women, and then one of them was not all women have the same, or like experience the same oppression. For example, like women of colour, or disabled women, lesbians, anything like that.
So that's an opening opposition point?
Yeah.
And what was the response?
And then the response was that all women suffer a baseline of oppression, and there should be some kind of compensation for like women that experience like additional what's it called, discrimination.
Yeah, there we go. That's really good. So that's thinking of what we think might come out of the opening opposition and what we can do in government to respond to that. Anyone have another example they want to share?
This house would put criminal trials on TV.
Okay.
It would encourage people that commit crimes for like self-glory to do more crime, and then the rebuttal is those people do it to feel empowered and like being like verbally chastised and humiliated, like on the national stage, like discourages them because they don't want to like have that happen to them.
Okay, that's really good. I like that one. Any other ones? I know we have a couple of tricky motions over here.
This House supports democratic governments using social disgust as grounds for restricting public speech and display.
Okay.
And then minorities like lesbians and gays often first to, I think, basically be called as disgusting.
Okay.
And the rebuttal was better ways to improve the rights of the LGBT plus community. It didn't really.
So do we want to maybe ask whoever wrote these to explain them a bit more? So we maybe understand what the 001, but who wrote the rebuttals?
I didn't understand the mission. My brain was stupid.
Yeah.
I just skimmed read and I was like, oh, gay people.
Okay, well, so that motion is a tricky one, but it's a classic one. It's should governments reduce some freedom of speech, like censor some things based not on the harm it has to other people, right? Because the British government says you can't incite hate speech, you can't incite people to violence, but we don't say okay, we're not going to censor this just because people don't like it. We used to, right? We used to say there were social I don't remember what they're called. Yeah, those ones where it's like later chatted his lover has too many sex scenes in it, so no one's allowed to read it, right? Like that. Lots of countries around the world do have this. Japan has obscenity laws, for instance. And should democratic governments do that? And what the opening opposition point there is saying, there are some groups of people that are vulnerable and are more likely to be thought of as disgusting by the majority. So what's our rebuttal to that?
Could you sort of say that the motion it wasn't ever about kind of clamping down on those people, it was about clamping down on the individuals who would actually hurt them?
Can you describe that a little bit more?
So like, with that example, it's not that the LGBT community is kind of promotes social disgust and therefore should be stopped. It's that those who kind of abuse the LGBT community promote disgust and therefore should have their freedoms taken away.
Okay, so that's a descriptive. I think the way I might just call it is that's a descriptive form of rebuttal, in which we're saying we don't think the mechanism, or we don't think the way this motion will happen will cause that to happen. So that is one form of rebuttal, yes, and I think that might be a good response to that. Is it one kind of rebuttal to it?
This feels weak to me because the competition can come back and say that like the moral majority or like attacking groups will use this law because they're not a minority or a majority, they have more power to attack those groups and put them in the same category. I feel like a lot could take that rebuttal apart.
Yeah, potentially. I'm definitely somebody who's of the opinion that even when we know we can't win a point, we should still contest it, right? Because it might be that in this social disgust motion, we recognize that probably there will be some people who are thought of, like there will be some things that are thought of as disgusting more than others. Example, in Japan, you're not allowed to show women's genitalia, men's genitalia is fine, right? So, like, yes, that has happened. But we think that our argument might be that we think that there is a right of people to use their social disgust regardless of whether we think it's the right kind of social disgust. you're upset at something, you don't think that people should see it, the government should probably enforce your right to have those things hidden. So, no, we're not going to win the argument, but we should contest it. Coco and then Arnie.
So in response to, again, I to go to where I should have done in the first place, I think it was said in a state where the social disgust was the status quo that like queer people shouldn't be shown on TV, like presumably like that's the status quo, so it wouldn't change, and any kind of exposure on the media is likely to be some kind of is likely to set up some kind of discourse anyway, which is visibility is probably more important. So like the actual harms of like queer people being shown on TV is probably comparable to the status quo anyway, insofar as like people backlash to the media, and any kind of visibility probably inspires some kind of discourse and allows like women to act as an entity.
I think there's two really good parts of that I would probably say in this section that I really say. One, social disgust is already used in the status quo to reduce the things that we see on television, right? Like, the BBC doesn't put certain things on the BBC because they're like, people won't like this and they will complain. It isn't a government policy, but it still happens. All this does is put that policy into writing. Second of all, I think what you're saying, which is, when the bar of what representation or what we see on television is set so high, it's going to be censored if it's disgusting, the kind of representation we produce is very different. Right? So it might be that we're not allowed to show, so like classic example, in the 1950s, you weren't allowed, no one was allowed anywhere near a bed unless they had a foot on the ground. They had to have at least one foot on the ground at all times. So it was to prevent like sexual scenes, right? And so in movies, we never saw men and women having sex. Women weren't sexual characters because we weren't allowed to think of them as sexual beings. That would have been socially disgusting. So instead, women were fully fledged characters who had adventures and did other things, because you couldn't put a female character in and not do anything with them, right? So the kind of representation we produce is very different. I think that's really good argument. Do you have something else to read?
Yeah, so in terms of, so it feels like a weak response, but in terms of, for example, if social disgust is used to put it into law, that's probably to some extent representative of the country's view. That means it's probably easier, for example, for international pressure in order to change that country's views in terms of if it is now in legislation. And if social disgust is used as the how they justify it, it's probably I'm not sure through what exact mechanism, but I imagine it's easier for international communities to pressure them to change.
Yeah, if we're using something that's widely representative of the population, it's probably already being practiced, right? This social disgust is probably already being felt. Right? We're probably not actually having lots of the representation we're talking about if people think this is socially disgusting. And having it in law would probably make it easier to talk about and change and think about what is socially disgusting. And there would probably now be a legal test, right, of what socially disgusting means. Instead of, right now, which is probably just some guy in BBC being like, well, I don't like it, so it's not going on the television, right? So like, all of these is really good ways of thinking about this motion, because it is a tough prop. That motion is a tough prop on purpose, right? And so I wanted to see how people did it. So really good. So now I'm tired of shouting at everybody, so let's all come in. Everybody bring your motions with you. Yeah, just bring it all in. That's why we were only leaving around. So one of the additional reasons I did this is because one of the really good ways to get good at opening government, to get good at being in opening government, is to think about motions all the time. Right? Because opening government is so much about the motion. It's not so much about responding to people, it's so much about what the motion involves and all the different little intricacies of the motion, everything you can think and everything you can pull out of it. And so this is why I wanted to do something that actually was real. These are all real motions that have been set at competitions. I've debated half of them, right? And so being able to think about motions all the time and to go through lists of motions and practice them as much as you can is one of the ways you're going to really get good at opening government. Okay, it sounds like they're coming in. Does anyone have any questions? Perfectly timed.
Now, when this,
How do I make this stop recording for you?
I'll make it stop recording.
Okay, sorry.
When you say evidence of emotion, when you talk to your partner, isn't confident on that,